The mirror told the truth, even when Bella Thompson wished it would lie. She stared at her reflection in the cramped bathroom of her Stamford apartment, her trembling hands hovering over the tube of red lipstick she'd purchased specifically for tonight. The fluorescent light above the sink flickered. It had been doing that for 3 months, and her landlord still hadn't fixed it, casting strange shadows across her face that made her look older than 28. Harder, more like the woman she was pretending to be. "This is for you, Dad," she whispered, finally pressing the lipstick to her lips. The color was bold, aggressive, nothing like the neutral tones she usually wore. But tonight wasn't about being herself. Tonight was about becoming someone else entirely, someone capable of destruction. She pulled back, examining her work. The red slash of color transformed her face, gave her an edge she'd spent 3 years cultivating. Her honey brown hair was blown out in loose waves. Her hazel eyes, usually warm and approachable, had been rimmed with dark liner that made them look sharp, predatory. "Richard Thompson," she said to her reflection, speaking her father's name like a prayer. "I'm going to make him pay, I promise." The photograph was still taped to the corner of her mirror, the one she looked at every morning when she woke up and every night before she went to bed. Her father, standing in front of their Greenwich estate, his arm around her shoulders at her college graduation. He was smiling in that photo. They both were. That was before everything fell apart. 3 years ago, Bella had driven up to that same estate for a surprise weekend visit. She'd just been promoted at her accounting firm and wanted to celebrate with her parents. Instead, she'd found her mother screaming in the foyer and 2 police officers trying to break down the door to her father's home office. She'd pushed past all of them. She'd been the one to see him first. The image would never leave her mind, her father's body hanging from the ceiling beam, his face a color no living person should ever be. The chair was kicked over beneath him. On his desk, a suicide note consisting of just 3 words, written in his distinctive handwriting: "I'm so sorry." The weeks that followed were a blur of funeral arrangements, lawyers, and devastating revelations. Richard Thompson's hedge fund, Thompson Capital Management, had collapsed overnight. Clients lost millions. Employees lost their jobs, their savings, their retirement funds. And at the center of it all was a hostile takeover orchestrated by an investment firm called Park Capital Holdings. The CEO was a man named Sungmin Park. Bella had never heard of him before her father's death, but in the 3 years since, she'd made it her mission to learn everything. Sungmin Park was a ghost in the financial world, a Korean-American businessman who operated in the shadows of legitimate commerce. His company had offices in Manhattan, San Francisco, and Beverly Hills, but its roots were in Seoul, tied to old money that people only whispered about. Some said his family had connections to organized crime. Others said he was a genius who transformed dirty money into clean profits. Everyone agreed on one thing: you didn't cross Sungmin Park and walk away intact. He had destroyed her father, and tonight, Bella was taking the first step toward destroying him. She checked her phone one more time. 7:42 p.m. She had to be at the Velvet Room by 8 for her interview. The exclusive members-only lounge on Manhattan's Upper East Side was one of the most elite establishments in the city. Politicians, celebrities, hedge fund managers, they all frequented its dark leather booths and crystal-studded bars. More importantly, according to the 6 months of research Bella had conducted, Sungmin Park was a regular whenever he was in New York. Getting hired there had taken every connection she'd built over the past 3 years. A friend of a friend knew the general manager. A well-placed lie about her experience in high-end hospitality had secured the interview. Tonight was about making sure she didn't blow it. She grabbed her bag, took one last look at her father's photograph, and walked out the door. The subway ride from Stamford to Manhattan felt longer than usual, probably because every minute brought Bella closer to the moment of truth. She'd rehearsed her cover story 100 times. She was tired of corporate accounting, needed a change of pace, wanted to work somewhere exciting. It was thin, but she was counting on her charm and qualifications. Forensic accounting degree from Columbia, 3 years at a boutique firm, to raise her profile above the typical cocktail waitress. The Velvet Room was located on a quiet side street off Madison Avenue, its entrance marked only by a small brass plaque and a doorman who looked like he could break bones for a living. Bella approached with her head held high, giving her name and stating that she had an 8 o'clock interview with Mr. Harrison. The doorman checked his tablet, nodded once, and opened the door. Inside, the velvet room lived up to its name. The walls were covered in deep burgundy fabric that absorbed sound and light, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the spacious floor plan. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings, their glow supplemented by flickering candles on every table. The bar stretched along one wall, all dark wood and gleaming brass, staffed by bartenders in crisp white shirts and black vests. Bella was directed to a small office near the back, where she waited for Mr. Harrison. She sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, reviewing her notes one final time. When Mr. Harrison finally appeared, he was not what she expected. Short, balding, with kind eyes that seemed out of place in such an establishment. He sat across from her, reviewed her resume, and asked perfunctory questions about her availability and experience. "You're overqualified," he said flatly, looking up from her paperwork. "I'm motivated," Bella countered. "And I'm a quick learner. I know this isn't a typical career move, but I need something different, something that challenges me in a new way." Mr. Harrison studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. "I appreciate you coming in, Ms. Thompson, but I'm afraid the position was filled about an hour ago. I should have called to cancel. My apologies for wasting your time." The words hit Bella like a physical blow. 3 years of planning, 6 months of preparation, and it all crumbled because someone else got hired an hour before she walked through the door. "I see," she managed, keeping her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "Well, thank you for the opportunity. If anything changes, I'll keep your resume on file." He wouldn't, they both knew it. Bella stood, gathered her things, and walked out of the office on wooden legs. Her mind was already racing through alternatives. There had to be another way in, another connection, another plan. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the man until they nearly collided in the narrow hallway. "Excuse me," she muttered, stepping aside. He stopped. Bella looked up, and the breath caught in her throat. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders beneath an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. His hair was black, cut short on the sides but longer on top, swept back from a face that belonged on the cover of a magazine. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips that might have been sensual if they weren't pressed into such a hard line. But it was his eyes that held her captive, dark as obsidian, cold as the January wind outside. They looked at her into her, with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. He said nothing, just stared. Bella felt heat rise to her cheeks, a reaction she couldn't control and didn't understand. This wasn't like her. She didn't get flustered by handsome men. She'd trained herself to be ice, to be steel, to be untouchable. Then he was gone, brushing past her without a word and disappearing through a door at the end of the hallway. Bella stood frozen for a moment, her heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with her failed interview. Who was that? Behind her, Mr. Harrison's office phone rang. She heard his muffled voice, then a long pause. When he spoke again, his tone had changed completely. "Ms. Thompson." Bella turned. Mr. Harrison was standing in his doorway, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I just received a call. It seems the position is available after all, if you're still interested." Bella blinked. Yes, I'm interested." "Wonderful. Can you start tomorrow?" Her mind whirled. What just happened? Who made that call? "Tomorrow works perfectly," she said. Mr. Harrison smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Excellent. Come in at 6. We'll get you set up." Bella thanked him and made her way to the exit, still reeling from the sudden reversal. Outside, the cold air hit her face like a slap, grounding her back in reality. She'd done it. She was in. She pulled out her phone to check the time and found a notification waiting. One new text message from an unknown number. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She shouldn't open it. Unknown numbers were usually spam, scams, or wrong numbers, but something made her tap anyway. The message appeared. "You have your father's eyes. Careful who you hunt, Miss Thompson." Bella's blood turned to ice. She looked around wildly, searching the crowded sidewalk for anyone watching her. Business people rushed past, heads down against the cold. Couples walked arm in arm. A vendor sold roasted nuts on the corner. No one was paying her any attention. She looked back at the message, read it again. Someone knew who she was. Someone knew why she was here, and they'd known before she'd even made her first move. The man in the hallway, those cold, knowing eyes. It had to be him. But who was he? Bella shoved her phone into her bag and started walking toward the subway, her mind churning. She'd planned for many scenarios. She'd anticipated background checks, suspicion, even hostility. But she hadn't planned for this, for someone to see through her before the game had even begun. She should be afraid. She should turn back, abandon this ridiculous revenge scheme, and go back to her safe little life in Stamford. Instead, she felt a strange thrill run through her. The hunt was on, and apparently she wasn't the only one playing. Bella deleted the text. It was the first thing she did when she got back to her apartment, before she even took off her coat. She told herself it didn't matter. Probably some kind of security test, a way to rattle new employees and see who spooked easily. Or maybe a prank from someone who'd overheard her interview. There were explanations, reasonable ones. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stood in her tiny kitchen, forcing herself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. A technique she'd learned from the therapist her mother had insisted she see after her father's death. She'd stopped going after 3 sessions. She didn't need therapy, she needed justice, but the breathing exercises had stuck. Calm, she needed to be calm. She made herself tea, though she couldn't taste it. She went through her nighttime routine, shower, skincare, review of tomorrow's plan on autopilot. By the time she climbed into bed, she'd almost convinced herself that the text was nothing. A coincidence. A test she would pass by ignoring it. Sleep, when it finally came, was restless and full of shadows. The first week at the Velvet Room was an exercise in transformation. Bella learned quickly that this was not like any job she'd ever had. The clients weren't just wealthy. They were the kind of wealthy that existed in a different reality. They didn't ask for prices because prices didn't matter. They didn't make requests. They issued commands. And the staff, from the bartenders to the servers to the silent security guards stationed at every exit, existed to fulfill those commands without question. She kept her head down. She memorized faces. She learned the rhythms of the place, which booths were reserved for regulars, which bartenders made the best cocktails, which nights drew the biggest crowds. She was pleasant but forgettable, exactly as she'd planned. And she watched. She watched the tech billionaires who came in after closing deals worth hundreds of millions, ordering champagne that cost more than her car. She watched the politicians who slipped in through the back entrance, their security details trying to look casual as they scanned the room. She watched the hedge fund managers who laughed too loud and tipped too generously, their confidence masking whatever darkness drove them to drink alone in exclusive lounges. But mostly, she watched for him. Sungmin Park didn't appear, not on her first night, or her second, or her third. By day 5, Bella started to worry that her intel was wrong, that he'd changed his patterns, that she'd spent 3 years preparing to infiltrate a place he no longer frequented. Then, on day 8, he walked in. Bella was behind the bar, restocking glasses, when the energy in the room shifted. It was subtle, a slight stiffening of postures, a few heads turning toward the entrance, but she'd learned to read the signals. 2 men in black suits entered first, their eyes scanning every corner of the room with professional efficiency. Private security. Serious private security, the kind that came with military training and zero tolerance for surprises. Behind them came Sungmin Park. She recognized him immediately from the photographs she'd studied for years, but no photograph had prepared her for the reality. He moved like a predator, all coiled power and controlled grace. His suit was darker than his security team's, perfectly tailored to his lean frame. His face was the same collection of sharp angles she remembered from her research, but there was something else there too, a weariness around his eyes that the photos hadn't captured. And then she realized he was the man from the hallway, the one who'd looked right through her on the night of her interview. Her heart hammered against her ribs. He took a private booth near the back, his security positioned to monitor all approaches. A tablet appeared from somewhere, his jacket, his briefcase, she couldn't tell, and he began to work, his fingers moving across the screen with focused intensity. He didn't look at anyone, he didn't speak, he just worked. For 20 minutes, Bella watched from behind the bar, pretending to polish glasses while her mind raced. This was the man who destroyed her father, the man she'd sworn to ruin, and he was sitting 30 feet away, as untouchable as ever. Thompson. She startled at the sound of her name. Mr. Harrison was standing beside her, his expression pinched. Yes. Mr. Park's usual server called in sick. He needs his bourbon refreshed. You're up. Bella's mouth went dry. Me. You're the only one not visibly terrified of him. Mr. Harrison's tone made it clear this wasn't a compliment. Try not to spill anything. Before she could protest, he was gone. Bella looked down at her hands. They were steady, a small miracle. She grabbed the bottle of Pappy Van Winkle from the top shelf. She'd memorized the preferences of every major client, including him, poured a precise measure into a fresh glass, and placed it on a serving tray. The walk to his booth felt like it took an hour. His security watched her approach, their hands moving subtly toward concealed weapons. Bella kept her eyes forward, her pace measured, her expression neutral. She reached the table, set down the glass, and felt his gaze on her like a physical weight. You're new. His voice was deep, slightly accented, utterly controlled. He didn't look up from his tablet. Yes, sir, Bella said. Started last week. Silence. She should leave. Protocol dictated that she retreat immediately unless the client requested something further. But something kept her rooted there, waiting. Finally, he looked up. Those eyes, black and bottomless and knowing. They swept over her face, cataloging every detail, and Bella had the unsettling feeling that he could see everything. Every lie she'd told, every secret she'd hidden, every dark thought she'd harbored about him. What's your name? He asked. Bella, sir, Bella Thompson. Was she imagining it, or did something flicker in his expression at the name? It was gone too quickly to tell. Thompson, he repeated, as if tasting the word. That's an old Connecticut name. Yes, sir, Greenwich originally. Silence again. He was studying her, she realized, not with attraction or interest, with assessment, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Thank you for the drink, Bella Thompson, he said finally. You may go. She inclined her head and retreated, forcing herself not to look back. She'd done it. She'd spoken to him, the first tiny thread in the web she planned to weave. But as she returned to the bar, she couldn't shake the feeling that their exchange had been less an introduction and more an interrogation. That somehow, in those brief seconds, he'd learned more about her than she had about him. Later that night, as she was closing out her section, Mr. Harrison approached her again. You made an impression, he said, his tone unreadable. I just brought him his drink. Whatever you did, Mr. Park has requested that you serve him exclusively going forward. Bella's heart lurched. Exclusively. When he's here, you're his server, no one else. Mr. Harrison paused. Don't make me regret this arrangement, Thompson. He walked away, leaving Bella alone with her racing thoughts. This was good. This was better than good. Direct access to Sung-Min Park, week after week. Time to study him, to find weaknesses, to build the kind of rapport that would let her get close enough to destroy him. She should be thrilled. Instead, she felt a cold finger of dread trace down her spine. Because Sung-Min Park wasn't the kind of man who made requests without a reason. He'd asked for her specifically. Why? What she didn't notice, couldn't have noticed, was the man in the corner booth near the exit. Middle-aged, nondescript, nursing the same whiskey he'd ordered hours ago. He'd been watching her all night, his eyes tracking her every movement with patient intensity. When she finally left through the staff entrance, he waited 5 minutes. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's me." She made contact. He requested her. A pause. "Yes, I'm sure. I have photographs. She's exactly what we've been looking for." He ended the call, finished his drink, and disappeared into the Manhattan night. 3 days passed after Bella received the assignment to serve Sung-min exclusively. 3 days in which she saw him twice more, each encounter brief and professional. He ordered bourbon. She brought it. He worked on his tablet. She retreated. But she could feel him watching her when she wasn't looking. Small glances, quick assessments. Whatever test he was conducting, she hadn't passed or failed yet. She was still being evaluated. On the 4th night, she stayed late to help with inventory. The lounge was nearly empty when she finally clocked out, stepping through the staff entrance into the alley behind the building. The black SUV was waiting for her. At first, she thought it was a car service. Some of the wealthier staff members sometimes got rides home from appreciative clients. But as she walked toward the street, the SUV's doors opened, and 2 men in black suits stepped out. She recognized them, Sung-min's security. "Miss Thompson," one of them said. It wasn't a question. Bella's hand moved toward her phone. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Park would like to speak with you." "At 1 in the morning." Mr. Park's schedule is unconventional. The second man opened the SUV's rear door. Inside, she could see leather seats, tinted windows, and absolutely nothing that indicated whether this was an invitation or a kidnapping. "And if I say no?" The first man smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Park rarely asks twice. Bella calculated her options. She could run, but they'd almost certainly catch her. She could scream, but the alley was deserted at this hour. She could call the police, but what would she say? A businessman wanted to talk to her. And beneath all the rational calculations, a voice in the back of her mind whispered, "This is what you wanted. Access, information, an opportunity." She got in the SUV. The drive was silent. The 2 men sat on either side of her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched hers, a not-so-subtle reminder that she was trapped. Bella watched the city blur past through the tinted windows, the lights of Midtown giving way to the sleeker architecture of Tribeca. They pulled up to a building she recognized from her research, 443 Greenwich Street, one of the most exclusive residential addresses in Manhattan. Apartments here sold for tens of millions. Of course, Sung-min Park lived here. The elevator required a key card and a biometric scan. It rose without stopping, depositing them in a private foyer that opened directly into the penthouse. The space was stunning, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture. The Manhattan skyline glittered beyond the glass like a sea of stars, the city's frenetic energy reduced to silent beauty at this height. A woman was waiting for them, Asian, mid-40s, with sharp features and an air of cold competence. She wore a black suit that matched the security team's, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Miss Thompson," she said, her Korean accent subtle but present. "I am Ms. Yoon, Mr. Park's chief of staff. Please follow me." She led Bella through the penthouse, past abstract art pieces that probably cost more than Bella's annual salary, past a kitchen that gleamed with professional-grade equipment, and into a living room dominated by a sectional sofa and a wall-mounted fireplace that burned with real flames. Sung-min Park was seated on the sofa, holding a glass of bourbon, always bourbon, and watching her enter with those unreadable eyes. "Thank you, Ms. Yoon. Leave us." Ms. Yoon inclined her head and withdrew, though Bella had no doubt she was nearby, listening. Sung-min gestured to a chair across from him. "Sit." Bella sat. For a long moment, he said nothing. Just watched her, his expression impossible to read. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable, then painful. Bella forced herself not to fidget, not to speak, not to show any sign of the anxiety clawing at her chest. Finally, he spoke. "Who sent you?" Bella kept her face neutral. "No one sent me. I applied for a job. I got hired." "Your background check came back clean. Too clean." He set down his glass, leaning forward slightly. Forensic accounting degree from Columbia, 3 years at a boutique firm in Hartford, outstanding performance reviews, and then you suddenly decide to become a cocktail waitress at a lounge where drinks cost more than some people's rent. I needed a change of pace. That's not an answer. It's the truth. He studied her, his gaze penetrating. You know what I find interesting, Miss Thompson? Your name. Thompson is an old money name in Connecticut, Greenwich specifically. There was a prominent hedge fund manager named Richard Thompson who worked in that area. He died about 3 years ago. Suicide, I believe. Bella's heart stopped. He was my father, she said, because there was no point in lying about something he could verify in seconds. Yes, Sungmin's expression didn't change. And his fund collapsed shortly before his death. A hostile takeover, if memory serves, orchestrated by my company. Bella said nothing. So let me ask you again, Miss Thompson. He leaned even closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous murmur. Who sent you, and what exactly are you hunting? The question hung in the air between them. Bella's mind raced through her options. She could confess everything, throw herself on his mercy, hope he'd appreciate her honesty. She could lie, try to maintain her cover, hope she was a better actress than he was an interrogator. She could. I'm hunting nothing, she said finally, meeting his eyes with a steadiness she didn't feel. My father's death destroyed my family. I had to rebuild my life from scratch. And when I got the chance to work somewhere that might let me forget, even for a few hours, what happened to us, I took it. His expression flickered, surprise, doubt, and then smoothed over. That's a compelling story. It's the truth. He rose from the sofa, moving toward her with slow, deliberate steps. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive, woodsy, with an undertone of spice. I know a hunter when I see one, he said quietly. I've survived this long because I trust my instincts, and my instincts tell me you're not what you appear to be. Bella held his gaze, refusing to look away. Maybe your instincts are wrong this time. For a heartbeat, something passed between them, a current of tension that had nothing to do with suspicion or danger. Then he stepped back. Maybe, he acknowledged, but I don't think so. He returned to the sofa, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. You can go. Ms. Yoon will ensure you get home safely. Bella stood, her legs unsteady beneath her. She'd made it. She'd survived the interrogation. But as she reached the doorway, Sungmin's voice stopped her. Come back to the lounge tomorrow, Miss Thompson. I have a different job in mind for you. She turned. What kind of job? His smile was sharp, predatory. The kind that requires your particular talents. Before she could ask what he meant, Ms. Yoon appeared and escorted her to the elevator. The ride down was silent. The SUV ride home was silent, but Bella's mind was anything but quiet. He hadn't eliminated her, despite his suspicions. He hadn't fired her or threatened her or called the police. Instead, he'd pulled her closer. What kind of game was Sungmin Park playing? And, a thought that disturbed her more than she wanted to admit, why did part of her want to keep playing it? Bella arrived at the Velvet Room the following evening with knots in her stomach and steel in her spine. She'd spent the entire day replaying the interrogation in her mind, analyzing every word, every glance, every subtle shift in Sungmin's expression. She'd prepared for hostility, for violence even. What she hadn't prepared for was curiosity. The way he'd looked at her like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve rather than a threat he wanted to eliminate. And now he had a job for her, a job that required her particular talents. Mr. Harrison intercepted her before she could clock in. You're expected upstairs, he said, his tone suggesting he didn't know what that meant but also didn't want to know. Upstairs. Second floor, take the service stairs and turn left. Ms. Yoon will meet you. Bella hadn't known there was a second floor. In her week of memorizing the lounge's layout, she'd never seen anyone use those stairs. She climbed them now, her heels clicking against wood that looked original to whatever building had stood here a century ago. The lighting was dimmer up here, the decor less polished. This wasn't a space designed to impress clients. It was a space designed for business. Ms. Yoon was waiting at the top, her expression as unreadable as ever. This way. She led Bella down a narrow hallway to a door at the end. No nameplate, no identification of any kind. Ms. Yoon knocked twice, then opened it and stepped aside. Sung-min was behind a desk, reviewing documents spread across its surface. The office was surprisingly modest, just a desk, 2 chairs, a few filing cabinets, and a single window that looked out over the city. No art, no personal touches, no indication that a billionaire used this space. He didn't look up when she entered. Close the door. Bella did. For a long moment, the only sound was the rustle of paper as he continued reading. Then he set aside the document, folded his hands on the desk, and fixed her with that penetrating stare. "My company is being investigated by the SEC," he said without preamble. "Allegations of money laundering through our real estate holdings. The charges are baseless, but the investigation is inconvenient." Bella kept her expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that." "I'm sure you are." A flicker of something, humor, skepticism, crossed his face. "I need someone to audit my internal books before the federal investigators do. Someone with forensic accounting skills. Someone discreet. Someone who isn't already on my payroll and therefore potentially compromised." Bella's heart rate accelerated. He was offering her access, real access to his company's financial records. The exact thing she'd been planning to spend months maneuvering for. "Why me?" she asked, because asking was expected. Because refusing to ask would be suspicious. "Because you're already lying to me about something," Sung-min said, his voice flat. "Which means you have secrets, and people with secrets are easier to control. They understand the value of discretion." The brutal honesty of it took her breath away. He was essentially admitting that he planned to leverage whatever he discovered about her to ensure her silence. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt almost refreshing after years of dealing with people who hid their motives behind smiles and pleasantries. What would this job entail? "You'd work on site at our headquarters in San Francisco for approximately 3 weeks. You'd have security clearance for all financial records. You'd report directly to me." He paused. "The compensation would be substantial." 3 weeks. That was enough time to find what she needed, to build a case, to destroy him. "And if I say no?" His smile was sharp. "Then you go back to serving drinks and I find someone else, but I don't think you'll say no." "Why not?" "Because you want to know. You want to understand why your father's fund collapsed. You think my records will give you answers." He leaned forward. "I'm offering you the keys to my kingdom, Miss Thompson. Why would you refuse?" She should refuse. Every survival instinct she possessed was screaming at her to walk away, to disappear, to abandon this increasingly dangerous game. But he was right. She wanted answers. More than that, she wanted justice. And she wasn't going to get either by serving bourbon to rich men in dark rooms. "When do I start?" "We leave in 2 days. Pack for California weather, it's warmer there." He returned his attention to his documents, dismissing her. Bella stood, her mind racing. This was everything she'd hoped for and nothing she'd expected. She'd planned to spend months working her way into his inner circle, and instead he was handing her access on a silver platter. It was too easy, way too easy. But she couldn't afford to question her luck. Not now, when the goal was finally within reach. She was almost at the door when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Looking at your phone during a meeting with Sung-min Park seemed like a bad idea, but the buzz came again, and again. "You should answer that," Sung-min said without looking up. Bella pulled out her phone. 3 new messages, all from unknown numbers. The first read, "He's not who you think he is." The second, "Your father wasn't who you thought he was either." And the third, "Ask Sung-min about the $40 million your father stole." Bella stared at the screen, the words blurring as her vision narrowed. Stole, her father didn't steal anything. He was a victim, not a criminal. Everything she'd believed for 3 years, The narrative that had shaped her grief, her rage, her entire plan, was built on that foundation. If that foundation was a lie. Miss Thompson. She looked up. Sung-min was watching her, his expression unreadable. Bad news, he asked. She forced her voice to stay steady. Just spam. I'll see you in 2 days. She left before he could respond, walking down the stairs and out of the building on autopilot. Outside, the cold air hit her face, but she barely felt it. Her father, $40 million, stolen. It couldn't be true. It was a trick, a manipulation, someone trying to throw her off balance. But the texts knew things. They knew about her father's eyes, a detail that wouldn't be in any public record. They knew she was hunting someone. They knew details that suggested access to information she'd assumed was private. Who was sending them, and why? Bella made it 2 blocks before she had to stop, bracing herself against a lamppost as her legs threatened to give out. She'd spent 3 years building a case against Sung-min Park. 3 years feeding her rage, hunting her skills, preparing for the moment when she could finally destroy the man who'd ruined her family. But what if she'd been wrong? What if she'd been chasing the wrong enemy all along? 2 days later, Bella stood on the tarmac of Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, staring at the private jet that would carry her to San Francisco. The aircraft was smaller than commercial jets, but no less impressive, sleek white exterior with gold accents, stairs leading up to an entrance that promised luxury she'd only seen in movies. A crew member took her single suitcase with a polite nod and disappeared inside. Sung-min was already aboard when she climbed the stairs. He sat in one of the cream leather seats, his attention fixed on his phone, not acknowledging her entrance. Ms. Yoon sat across from him, reviewing something on a tablet. The interior was exactly what Bella expected. Polished wood panels, leather everywhere, a bar stocked with bottles that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She chose a seat by the window, buckling in and trying not to gape like a tourist. The flight took off smoothly, Manhattan's skyline shrinking behind them as they rose into the clouds. Bella accepted a glass of sparkling water from the flight attendant and settled in for what would be 5.5 hours of enforced proximity to the man she was supposed to be destroying. For the first hour, silence reigned. Sung-min worked on his phone, Ms. Yoon typed on her tablet, and Bella pretended to read the financial documents she'd been given, preliminary reports about Park Capital Holdings' structure and operations. But her mind kept drifting to the texts. She'd spent the past 2 days digging into her father's finances, using skills she'd honed over 3 years of preparing for this moment. What she'd found had shaken her to her core. The $40 million discrepancy was real. She'd traced it through layers of shell companies and offshore accounts, following a trail that her father had clearly tried to obscure. The money had moved 3 days before his death, transferred to an account she couldn't access without more information. And the last person to authorize that transfer wasn't her father. It was her mother. That discovery had sent Bella reeling. Her mother, the woman who'd been so devastated by Richard's death that she'd barely spoken at his funeral, had accessed his accounts and moved $40 million just before he died. Why? Where had the money gone? And what did it have to do with the collapse of Thompson Capital Management? She needed answers, but first, she needed to survive this flight without giving anything away. You're distracted. Sung-min's voice cut through her thoughts. She looked up to find him watching her, his phone set aside. Just reviewing the materials, she said, holding up the documents. You've read the same page 4 times without turning it. Damn, he noticed everything. I have a lot on my mind, she admitted, which was technically true. He studied her for a moment. You remind me of someone. Who? A pause. Something shifted in his expression, a softening that was there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. Someone who thought they knew the whole story, he said quietly. They didn't. Before Bella could respond, the jet shuddered, violently. Papers flew from her lap. Ms. Yoon's tablet clattered to the floor. The flight attendant stumbled against the bar, sending glasses crashing. Turbulence, severe turbulence. Bella gripped the armrest, her knuckles white, as the plane dropped and shook. She'd never been afraid of flying before, but this felt different, like the aircraft might shake itself apart around them. A warm hand closed over hers. She looked up. Sung-min had moved to the seat beside her, his hand on hers, steadying her without a word. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, one impossibly long moment, everything else fell away. The turbulence, the investigation, the revenge she'd spent years planning. All of it disappeared, leaving only his dark gaze and the warmth of his palm against her skin. Then the shaking stopped. The plane leveled out. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, apologizing for the rough patch and assuring them the rest of the flight would be smooth. Sung-min pulled back. The wall returned to his eyes. "Thank you," Bella said, her voice strange in her own ears. He didn't respond, just returned to his seat and picked up his phone as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Bella could still feel the phantom pressure of his hand on hers, the unexpected comfort of his touch. It confused her, unsettled her. She was supposed to hate this man. She was supposed to be planning his destruction. Why did part of her want him to touch her again? They landed at a private airstrip near Palo Alto as the California sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A black Mercedes waited on the tarmac, and within minutes they were speeding towards San Francisco. Park Capital's West Coast headquarters was a glass and steel tower in the heart of the financial district, occupying an address that screamed wealth and power. The building's lobby was all marble and chrome, staffed by security personnel who checked IDs with military precision. Bella was issued a temporary badge, given a brief orientation by Ms. Yoon, and shown to her office, a small but well-appointed space on the 32nd floor with a view of the Bay Bridge. "Your access has been programmed into the building's security system," Ms. Yoon explained. "You can enter floors 15 through 35. Anything above or below requires additional authorization." "Understood. Mr. Park has requested that you dine with him tonight, 7 o'clock at his residence. A car will pick you up from your apartment at 6:30. Before Bella could respond, Ms. Yoon was gone. The apartment turned out to be a furnished corporate unit in a building a few blocks from the office, all modern finishes and breathtaking views of the bay. Bella unpacked her single suitcase, showered off the travel grime, and stood at the window watching the city lights flicker to life. She was here, inside Sung-min Park's empire, with access to his financial records and his personal time. Everything she'd planned was falling into place. So why did she feel more lost than ever? That night, alone in the apartment after dinner, Bella started digging. Not into Park Capital's books. That could wait until she had a better sense of what she was looking for, but into her father's final year. She pulled up records she'd saved on encrypted drives, documents she'd never had time to properly analyze, financial statements that had seemed irrelevant until now. The picture that emerged made her sick. Richard Thompson's gambling debts weren't just rumors. She found records of wire transfers to casinos in Atlantic City and Las Vegas. Private loans from individuals whose names she didn't recognize. A pattern of increasingly desperate financial decisions that painted her father not as a victim, but as a man drowning in his own bad choices. And then there was the $40 million. She traced it again, more carefully this time, using every tool in her forensic arsenal. The money had moved through 4 shell companies before landing in an account registered to a company called Hale Holdings LLC. Hale, the name nagged at her, familiar but unplaceable. She kept digging, following digital breadcrumbs through tax records and corporate filings. At 2 a.m., exhausted and hollow, she finally found what she was looking for. Hale Holdings LLC was a subsidiary of Hale Financial Group, and Hale Financial Group was owned by a man named Victor Hale. Victor Hale, why did that name sound familiar? She searched her memory, flipping through mental files of names and faces she'd researched over the past 3 years. Nothing clicked. Then, on impulse, she pulled up her parents' wedding announcement from the Greenwich Society pages. She'd read it 1,000 times after her father's death, clinging to evidence of happier times. This time, she noticed something she'd missed before. The announcement mentioned that Diane Mitchell, her mother, had previously been engaged to Victor Hale, a young investment banker, before meeting Richard Thompson. Bella stared at the screen, the words blurring before her eyes. Her mother had been engaged to Victor Hale. Her mother had transferred $40 million to a company owned by Victor Hale 3 days before her husband's death. What the hell was going on? Bella hadn't spoken to her mother in 2 years. After her father's death, Diane Thompson had retreated from everything, from Greenwich, from their social circle, from Bella herself. She'd sold the family estate for a fraction of its value, packed a few suitcases, and moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. Within 8 months, she'd remarried, a retired cardiologist named Robert Caldwell who'd swept her off her feet at some charity function. Bella had refused to attend the wedding, had refused, in fact, to acknowledge that it was happening at all. Her father had been dead less than a year, and her mother was starting a new life as if Richard Thompson had never existed. They'd exchanged a few terse emails in the beginning, birthday wishes, holiday greetings, the bare minimum of familial obligation. Then even those had stopped. Bella had convinced herself she didn't care. Now, standing in the bathroom of her San Francisco apartment at 6 a.m., she knew she had to break the silence. She dialed before she could talk herself out of it. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Bella was preparing to leave a voicemail when her mother's voice came through the speaker. "Bella," Diane sounded wary, guarded. "Is something wrong?" "I found the account," Bella said without preamble. "The $40 million. Your name is on the access log." Silence. "Mom." "Where are you?" Diane's voice had changed, sharper now, with an edge of fear that Bella had never heard before. "California, working a job." "What kind of job? Bella, what are you doing?" "I'm doing what I should have done 3 years ago. I'm finding out what really happened to Dad." She paused, forcing her voice to stay steady. "And I'm starting to think you know more than you've told me." More silence. Then finally her mother spoke. "Don't dig into this. Please, Bella, you don't understand what happened." "Then explain it to me." A long, shaky breath. "Your father wasn't a good man, sweetheart. I tried to protect you from that. I tried to let you keep your memories of him intact. But if you keep digging..." "If I keep digging, what? I'll find out he was stealing from his own clients." "I already know that, Mom. What I don't know is why you moved $40 million to a company owned by your ex-fiancé 3 days before Dad killed himself." "Ex-fiancé, how do you..." Diane stopped herself. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Victor, you found Victor." "Who is he, Mom? What does he have to do with Dad's death?" "I can't tell you, not over the phone." A pause. "Please, Bella, walk away for your own safety." "My safety? What does that mean?" But the line was already dead. Bella stared at her phone, her mind racing. Her mother had confirmed the connection to Victor Hale. She'd implied there was danger, and she'd begged Bella to walk away without explaining why. None of it made sense. And that made Bella more determined than ever to find answers. The first day of actual work at Park Capital was a blur of spreadsheets and security protocols. Bella was given access to years of financial records, transactions, holdings, investment portfolios, and told to look for anything that might catch the SEC's attention. It was tedious, methodical work, exactly the kind she'd been trained for. Under normal circumstances, she would have found it soothing. But today, with her mother's warning echoing in her ears and questions about Victor Hale burning in her brain, she couldn't focus. She made errors, missed obvious discrepancies, had to redo entire sections because her mind kept drifting. At 4 o'clock, a knock at her office door made her jump. Sungmin stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with that penetrating gaze she was beginning to dread. "You're distracted," he said, the same observation he'd made on the plane. "I'm adjusting to the new environment." "You're making mistakes." He stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. Mistakes you wouldn't make if you were actually concentrating on the work. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me what's wrong. He moved closer, and Bella forced herself not to retreat. Whatever's bothering you, fix it. I don't pay for distraction. Something snapped inside her. You don't pay me at all, she shot back, her voice harder than she intended. I'm doing you a favor. I'm putting my career on hold to help you avoid an SEC investigation, and I'm doing it because... She stopped herself before she could say something she'd regret. Because, he prompted, one eyebrow raised. Because I need answers about my father's death, she admitted, the truth spilling out before she could stop it. And I think those answers might be buried in your company's records. Sung-min studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, not anger, as she'd expected, but something closer to understanding. Come to dinner tonight, he said. It wasn't a question. There are things we need to discuss. Things about my father. Things about the truth. He turned toward the door. 8 o'clock, Ms. Yoon will send you the address. He left without waiting for her answer, but they both knew she would be there. The restaurant was a Michelin-starred Korean establishment in Nob Hill, all understated elegance and impeccable service. Bella arrived in the nicest dress she'd packed, a simple black sheath that suddenly felt inadequate in the face of the opulence surrounding her. Sung-min was already seated at a private table in the back, secluded from the other diners by a series of screens that provided the illusion of privacy. He rose when she approached, a small gesture of courtesy that surprised her, and waited for her to sit before resuming his own seat. You look uncomfortable, he observed. I'm not used to places like this. Your family had money once. Once, not anymore. A server appeared, pouring water and presenting menus. Bella let Sung-min order for both of them, a choice that would normally irritate her, but tonight she had bigger concerns than asserting her independence over appetizers. You said you wanted to discuss the truth, she said once they were alone. What truth? Sung-min leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I knew your father. The words hit Bella like a physical blow. What? He came to me 3 years ago, 2 weeks before he died. Sung-min's voice was low, measured. He was desperate, terrified. He said someone was going to kill him. Bella's throat tightened. And you what? Turned him away? No, Sung-min's eyes met hers. I tried to save him. I failed. The air seemed to leave the room. Bella gripped the edge of the table, steadying herself against the wave of emotions crashing through her. You're lying, she managed. You destroyed his fund. You orchestrated the hostile takeover that ruined him. The takeover was meant to save him, not destroy him. That doesn't make any sense. It does if you understand what was really happening. Sung-min leaned forward. Your father was embezzling from his own fund, Bella. He owed money to dangerous people, Chinese syndicate connections out of Lowe's Angels. When he couldn't pay them back, he started skimming from client accounts, falsifying reports, digging himself deeper into a hole he couldn't escape. Bella shook her head. My father wasn't a criminal. Your father was a desperate man who made terrible choices. There was no judgment in Sung-min's voice, just flat, factual recitation. When the syndicate threatened his family, he came to me. My family has connections to certain networks in Asia, old relationships from a time when our business was less legitimate. I agreed to help. Why would you help him? Because he had information I needed, and because I thought I could use the situation to damage Victor Hale. Victor Hale. The name again, connecting to her mother's warning, to the $40 million, to secrets Bella was only beginning to uncover. The hostile takeover, Sung-min continued, was designed to freeze the fund's assets before your father could be exposed. It would buy time for him to quietly repay what he'd stolen and disappear with his family. We were 3 days from completing the extraction. What happened? Sung-min's jaw tightened. Someone leaked the takeover to the SEC before we could finish. Your father was cornered, exposed. He took his own life before I could get him out. The room seemed to tilt around Bella. Everything she'd believed, Every certainty that had driven her for 3 years was crumbling. "You're saying you didn't destroy him." "I'm saying I was trying to save him. The person who leaked the information is the one who killed him." "Who leaked it?" Sung-min's dark eyes held hers. "I've spent 3 years trying to find out. I thought it was an internal mole. But now that you're here, looking exactly like someone who wants revenge," he paused, "I'm starting to wonder if someone sent you." Bella's hands trembled around her wine glass. "You're lying." Sung-min didn't flinch. "I don't lie, it's inefficient." The words were so matter-of-fact, so devoid of pretense, that Bella almost believed him. Almost. "If what you're saying is true," she said slowly, "then why didn't you tell me before? Why bring me into your company, give me access to your records if you knew who I was all along?" "Because I needed to understand your angle." Sung-min refilled her wine glass, then his own. "When you showed up at the Velvet Room with a fake resume and a real grudge, I assumed someone had pointed you in my direction. I wanted to know who." "No one pointed me anywhere. I planned this myself." "Then you're either incredibly resourceful or incredibly foolish." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Possibly both." Bella set down her glass. "Tell me everything, from the beginning. I need to understand what really happened." And so he did. Over the next hour, between courses of Korean dishes Bella couldn't name and wouldn't remember tasting, Sung-min laid out the full story of her father's downfall. Richard Thompson's gambling addiction had started small. Weekend trips to Atlantic City, friendly poker games that escalated into high-stakes tournaments. By the time he realized he had a problem, he was already $15 million in debt to a private lending network connected to a Chinese syndicate operating out of Los Angeles. The syndicate wasn't interested in payment plans. They wanted their money, and they wanted it now. When Richard couldn't produce it, they started making threats against him, against his family. Desperate, Richard had started embezzling from his own fund. He was good at it. His forensic accounting background, the same skills he'd passed on to Bella, allowed him to hide the theft for months. But eventually, the numbers stopped adding up. Clients began to ask questions. The SEC began to sniff around. That's when Richard came to Sung-min. The Park family had old connections to organized networks in Asia, remnants of a time when their business dealings had been far less legitimate. Sung-min's father had spent decades trying to go straight, and Sung-min was continuing that effort. But the old relationships still existed, and they still carried weight. Richard knew about those connections. He came to Sung-min with a proposition: "Help me escape the syndicate's reach, and I'll give you information that will destroy Victor Hale." "Victor Hale," Bella interrupted. "My mother's ex-fiancé. What does he have to do with any of this?" Sung-min's expression darkened. "Victor Hale is the head of Hale Financial Group, legitimate on the surface, but underneath. He's connected to the same syndicate your father owed money to. He's been using his financial network to launder their money for years. And my father knew this." "Your father was one of his clients. The private lending network Richard borrowed from, Victor controlled it. The gambling debts, the escalating pressure, it was all orchestrated. Victor was squeezing your father, waiting until he was desperate enough to be useful." "Useful for what?" Sung-min leaned back, his eyes never leaving hers. "Your mother. It always comes back to your mother." The words hung in the air between them. Bella thought of the society page announcement, of the engagement that had ended before her mother met Richard Thompson. "They dated briefly in their 20s, Sung-min continued. "When your mother ended things and married Richard instead, Victor took it personally. He's a man who doesn't forgive betrayal, real or perceived. He waited decades, building his empire, biding his time. And when the moment was right, he started destroying your father. Not for money, for revenge." Bella's mind reeled. "You're saying my father's death was about a broken engagement from 30 years ago?" "I'm saying Victor Hale is a patient, vindictive man who holds grudges longer than most people hold memories." Sung-min's voice was grim. "Your father was just a means to an end. The real target was always your mother." The food on the table suddenly made Bella nauseous. She pushed her plate away, trying to process everything she'd heard. "The hostile takeover," she said slowly. "You orchestrated it to what? Freeze the fund before Victor could use it against my father." "Yes. If I could control the assets, I could quietly repay the stolen money, make the evidence disappear, and extract your father before anyone knew what had happened. In exchange, Richard would testify against Victor, give me enough information to bring down his entire operation." But someone leaked the takeover. To the SEC and to the media, simultaneously, 3 days before we were supposed to complete the extraction. Sungmin's jaw tightened. "Your father was publicly exposed as an embezzler. His clients lost millions. His employees lost their jobs. He lost everything. And then he killed himself." "Yes," Sungmin's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "I was too late." Silence stretched between them. The restaurant continued around them, other diners laughing, servers gliding past, but Bella felt encased in glass, separate from everything. "I've spent 3 years trying to find the leak," Sungmin said finally. "I thought it was someone inside my organization, but now," he studied her face, "now I'm wondering if there's another possibility." "What possibility?" "Your mother accessed your father's accounts 3 days before his death. She moved $40 million to a company controlled by Victor Hale." Sungmin's eyes were dark, unreadable. Either she was working with Victor or she was paying him off. Either way, she knew more than she's told anyone. Bella thought of her mother's voice on the phone that morning. The fear, the warning, walk away, for your own safety. What had Diane Thompson been so afraid of? Before Bella could respond, Sungmin's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression transformed instantly, from contemplative to hard-edged and alert. "We need to leave," he said, standing abruptly. "Now." "What? Why?" He grabbed her arm, his grip firm but not painful. "Someone just put a kill order on you, and it came from inside my organization." Bella's blood turned to ice. Sungmin was already pulling her toward the back of the restaurant, past startled servers, and through a door marked staff only. "How do you know?" she demanded. "Because I have people monitoring for exactly this kind of threat." He guided her through a kitchen full of starring cooks, then out a back exit into an alley. A black SUV was already waiting, engine running. "Get in." Bella climbed inside, her heart pounding. Sungmin followed, slamming the door behind them. The vehicle lurched forward, speeding away from the restaurant. "Where are we going?" Bella asked. "Somewhere safe." Sungmin was on his phone, speaking rapid Korean that Bella could barely follow. When he hung up, his face was grim. "The kill order came through an encrypted channel 2 hours ago. My people intercepted it, but the contractor may already be in position." "Contractor?" "A professional, someone who specializes in making problems disappear." He met her eyes. "Whoever wants you dead, they're not playing games. They want it done fast and clean." Bella struggled to breathe. 30 minutes ago, she'd been sitting in a restaurant, learning uncomfortable truths about her father. Now someone wanted her dead. "Who?" she managed. "Who would do this?" Sungmin's jaw was tight. "That's what we need to find out, but first, we need to keep you alive." The SUV merged onto the freeway, leaving the glittering lights of San Francisco behind. Bella watched the city disappear through the tinted windows and wondered if she'd ever see it again. Because suddenly, revenge didn't seem nearly as important as survival. The SUV wound through the hills south of San Francisco, leaving the glittering cityscape behind for darker, quieter roads. Bella sat rigid in her seat, acutely aware of Sungmin beside her, his presence somehow both threatening and reassuring in equal measure. Neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the occasional murmur of the driver communicating through an earpiece. Bella watched the landscape change through the tinted windows, urban density giving way to sprawling estates, then to wooded hillsides that blocked out even the moonlight. 20 minutes into the drive, Sungmin finally broke the silence. "You're handling this well." Bella almost laughed. "I'm not handling anything. I'm sitting here trying not to throw up." Most people would be hysterical by now, demanding explanations, making threats. He studied her profile in the dim light. You're thinking, planning, that's unusual. I've had 3 years of practice controlling my emotions. She turned to meet his gaze. When you spend that long planning revenge against someone, you learn to compartmentalize. Something flickered in his expression, respect, maybe, or recognition. You really did plan all of this yourself. The job at the lounge, the forensic accounting angle, all of it. Did you think I was lying? I thought you were a pawn, someone else's weapon pointed in my direction. He paused. I'm starting to realize you're something more complicated than that. Before Bella could respond, the SUV turned off the main road onto a private drive. Trees closed in around them, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the stars. Then the trees fell away, and Bella saw the house. It was massive, a sprawling modern structure of glass and stone, perched on a hillside overlooking what she assumed was a valley, though the darkness made it impossible to tell. Security lights illuminated a circular driveway and a front entrance flanked by armed guards. Where are we? Bella asked. Atherton, one of the most secure neighborhoods in the country. Sungmin stepped out as the SUV came to a stop. This property isn't connected to any of my known holdings. No paper trail, no public records. As far as the world is concerned, this house doesn't exist. Bella followed him inside, her heels clicking against marble floors. The interior was warm despite its modern aesthetic, rich wood accents, soft lighting, comfortable furniture arranged around a fireplace that was already burning. Ms. Yoon was waiting in the living room, her expression as unreadable as ever. She began speaking to Sungmin in rapid Korean, her tone clipped and urgent. Bella caught fragments, words she'd learned during her years of preparation, but the conversation moved too fast for her to follow completely. She heard Leek clearly, and contractor, and most disturbingly, Thompson. When Ms. Yoon finally paused, Sungmin turned to Bella. The kill order originated from within my organization, he said, his voice flat. Someone with high-level access placed it through a channel that should have been secure. My security team is working to identify the source, but it will take time. How much time? Hours, maybe days. He gestured toward the hallway. Ms. Yoon will show you to your room. Get some rest if you can. Tomorrow, we start looking for answers. Bella wanted to argue, to demand more information, more action, more something, but exhaustion was already pulling at her edges. The adrenaline that had carried her through the past few hours was fatting, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness she couldn't fight. She followed Ms. Yoon down the hallway to a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment in Stamford. The bed was king-sized, dressed in white linens that looked cloud-soft. Floor to ceiling, windows offered a view of nothing but darkness. But Bella could imagine the vista that would appear with daylight. There are clothes in the closet, Ms. Yoon said from the doorway. Toiletries in the bathroom. If you need anything, use the intercom by the bed. Ms. Yoon, Bella stopped her before she could leave. Who would want me dead? I haven't even done anything yet. The older woman's expression remained impassive. That's the question, isn't it? You haven't done anything, you don't know anything, which means someone isn't afraid of what you'll find. She paused, her dark eyes meeting Bella's. They're afraid of what you already know. She closed the door behind her, leaving Bella alone with that chilling thought. Sleep didn't come easily. Bella lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through everything she'd learned. Her father was an embezzler. Her mother had moved $40 million to her ex-fiancé. Victor Hale had orchestrated her family's destruction as revenge for a decades-old rejection. And Sungmin Park, the man she'd sworn to destroy, had actually been trying to save her father. Every certainty she'd built her life around for 3 years was a lie. She must have dozed eventually because she woke to darkness and the sound of voices, muffled coming from somewhere below. She checked her phone 3:17 a.m. Against her better judgment, Bella crept out of bed and into the hallway. The house was quiet except for those distant voices, growing clearer as she moved toward the staircase. She positioned herself at the top, hidden in shadows, and listened. Sung-min was on the phone, packing the living room below. His voice was cold, furious, a side of him she hadn't seen before. I don't care what it costs. Find him. And when you do, don't kill him. I want him alive. He has answers I need. A pause as the person on the other end responded. No, I don't trust anyone right now. The leak came from inside, which means anyone could be compromised. Another pause. Just do your job. Report back in 6 hours. He hung up, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration that made him seem almost human. Then he made another call, and Bella's blood froze at the name that came out of his mouth. Tell me everything you know about Diane Caldwell, Bella's mother. Diane Caldwell, her mother's married name. Sung-min was investigating her mother. Bella backed away from the staircase, her heart pounding so hard she was certain it would give her away. She retreated to her room, closed the door silently, and stood in the darkness trying to process what she'd heard. Her mother. Why was Sung-min looking into her mother? What did he suspect? And more importantly, what did her mother know that made her a target? Morning light flooded the guest room, revealing the view that darkness had hidden. Rolling hills dotted with mansions, a valley stretching toward distant mountains, and a sliver of San Francisco Bay glittering on the horizon. It was beautiful. Bella barely noticed. She showered quickly, dressed in clothes from the closet that fit surprisingly well, and went looking for answers. She found Sung-min in the kitchen, standing at the counter with a cup of coffee and a tablet. He looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd slept even less than she had, but his expression sharpened when she entered. You were listening last night, he said without preamble. Bella didn't bother denying it. You're investigating my mother. Yes. Why? He set down the tablet and faced her fully. Because your mother is connected to everything that's happening. Her ex-fiancé is Victor Hale. She moved $40 million to his company days before your father's death, and now someone wants you dead. He paused. The common denominator in all of this is Diane. My mother wouldn't, Bella stopped, because she didn't actually know what her mother would or wouldn't do. The woman who'd remarried 8 months after her husband's funeral was a stranger to her. Before your father, Sung-min continued, your mother was engaged to Victor Hale. Did she ever tell you why they broke up? No, she never talked about him at all. I didn't even know he existed until I found the wedding announcement. The official story is that they grew apart. The reality is more complicated. Sung-min picked up his tablet and handed it to her. On the screen was a photograph of a young woman, clearly her mother, maybe 22 or 23, standing next to a man Bella didn't recognize. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, with dark hair and pale eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. Victor Hale, Sung-min said, 30 years ago, before he built his empire. Bella studied the photo, trying to reconcile this young man with the shadowy figure who had apparently orchestrated her father's destruction. He doesn't look like a monster. Monsters rarely do. Sung-min took back the tablet. According to my sources, your mother ended the engagement when she discovered Victor's connections to organized crime. He was already involved with the syndicate back then, though at a much lower level. She found evidence of his activities and broke things off. So she knew what he was. She knew enough to run. The question is what she's known since. Sung-min's dark eyes met hers. 3 years ago, your mother accessed your father's accounts and moved $40 million to Victor's company. Either she was working with him or she was paying him off. Either way, she's been keeping secrets. Bella's throat tightened. I need to talk to her. I agree, which is why we're going to Scottsdale. Wait. You don't honestly think I'm letting you out of my sight? Someone put a kill order on you less than 12 hours ago. He moved toward the doorway. Pack whatever you need. We leave in an hour. The private jet touched down in Scottsdale just as the desert sun was beginning its descent toward the mountains. The landscape was nothing like California, all rust-colored earth and cacti, harsh beauty that seemed designed to discourage anyone without serious determination. Diane Caldwell, Bella still couldn't think of her by that name, lived in Paradise Valley, an enclave of wealth nestled against Camelback Mountain. The houses here weren't just expensive, they were statements, architectural declarations of success and status. Her mother's home was a sprawling adobe-style mansion with terracotta roofs and a courtyard fountain. Bella stood at the gate, her finger hovering over the intercom button, suddenly paralyzed by uncertainty. "Second thoughts?" Sung-min asked from beside her. "I haven't been here since the funeral. I haven't seen her in 2 years." Bella pressed the button before she could lose her nerve. "I don't even know who she is anymore." The intercom crackled. "Yes." "Mom, it's Bella, we need to talk." A long pause, then, "Bella, what are you? Is something wrong?" "Yes, please let me in." Another pause, longer this time. Then the gate began to swing open. They walked up the curved driveway in silence. The front door opened before they reached it, and there was Diane, older than Bella remembered, thinner, her face showing lines that hadn't been there 2 years ago. She was wearing a white linen dress, her hair styled perfectly, her composure firmly in place. Then she saw Sung-min, standing behind her daughter. Her face went white. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, but she wasn't looking at Bella. She was looking at Sung-min. "We need to talk," Sung-min said, his voice calm but unyielding. "About Yi-won." Diane's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. Her hands trembled as she gripped the doorframe for support. "You shouldn't have come here," she managed. "You're not safe, neither of you." "Then let us in," Bella said, "and tell us why." The inside of the house was immaculate, all cream-colored walls and southwestern art, expensive furniture arranged with designer precision. But Bella noticed the small details that betrayed her mother's anxiety. Curtains twitched aside as if she'd been watching the street, a cell phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline, eyes that kept darting toward the windows. Diane led them to the living room, checking over her shoulder as if expecting someone to materialize from the shadows. She sat on the edge of a leather chair, her posture rigid. "How did you find me?" she asked Sung-min. "I've always known where you were. I just didn't have a reason to make contact until now." He remained standing, arms crossed, his presence dominating the room. "Someone put a kill order on your daughter. It came from inside my organization, and every trail I follow leads back to Victor Hale, and to you." Diane's eyes closed. "I was afraid of this." "Mom," Bella sat across from her, leaning forward. "I know about the $40 million. I know about Victor. I know you were engaged to him before Dad." She paused. "What I don't know is why you never told me any of this. Why you let me believe Dad was a victim when you knew the truth." Her mother's laugh was bitter. "The truth? You want the truth?" She looked at Bella with eyes full of pain. "Your father wasn't a good man, sweetheart. I loved him, but I knew what he was. I knew about the gambling, the debts, the desperate deals with people who should never be trusted. I stayed because I thought I could save him. I thought my love would be enough. But it wasn't." "No, it wasn't." Diane's voice cracked. "When Victor's people came calling, demanding payment for debts your father could never repay, I knew it was over. The only question was whether I could save you." "So you moved the money," Bella said slowly, pieces clicking into place. "The $40 million, it was a payoff." "It was supposed to be. I emptied every account I could access, offered it to Victor as a settlement. I thought if I gave him what he wanted, he'd leave us alone." Diane shook her head. "I was wrong. Victor doesn't want money. He wants control. He wants revenge." "Revenge for what? For breaking off an engagement 30 years ago." Diane's expression twisted. "Victor doesn't forgive, ever. When I left him, I didn't just break his heart, I wounded his pride. I chose your father over him, and that was an insult he could never accept." She paused. "So he waited. He built his empire. And when he was ready, he destroyed Richard piece by piece, making sure I watched every moment." "And Dad," Bella's voice was barely a whisper, "did he know?" "He figured it out at the end. That's why he went to Sung-min, because he knew Victor's people would never let him go, and the Park family was the only power capable of standing against them." Diane looked at Sung-min with something like gratitude. "You tried to save him. I know that. Richard told me about your plan, the extraction, the evidence against Victor. He thought he was finally going to escape." "But someone leaked the operation," Sung-min said grimly. And Richard was exposed before I could get him out. Yes, Diane's voice dropped to a whisper, and I've spent 3 years trying to find out who. Sungmin went very still. You've been investigating the leak. Quietly, carefully, I couldn't risk drawing Victor's attention. Diane's eyes met his. That's how I found out about your brother. The room seemed to freeze. Bella looked between them, confused. What about his brother? She asked. Sungmin's jaw tightened. My brother Yiwon died 3 years ago, a week after your father. No, Diane's voice was soft but certain. Yiwon didn't die, he's alive, and I'm the one who helped him disappear. The silence that followed Diane's revelation was absolute. Bella watched Sungmin's face cycle through emotions. Disbelief, rage, grief, and something else she couldn't identify, before settling into a cold mask that was somehow more frightening than all the others. Explain, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Diane took a shaky breath. Yiwon came to me 3 years ago, right after Richard's death. He was terrified. He said he'd discovered something about Victor's operation, something that would destroy everything if it came out. Victor's people were hunting him. He had days, maybe hours, before they found him. So you helped him fake his death. Sungmin's tone was ice. You let me grieve for 3 years. You let me believe my brother was dead. I didn't have a choice. Yiwon was in danger, and he knew things that could get both of you killed if Victor found out. Diane's voice trembled. The car accident was staged. I had contacts from my old life before Richard, people who owed me favors. I used them to create a convincing death and get Yiwon out of the country. Where is he now? I don't know exactly. Seoul, last I heard. He contacts me once a year just to let me know he's alive. Diane reached into her pocket and pulled out a phone. This is how we communicate. Encrypted, untraceable. Sungmin stared at the phone like it was a venomous snake. Show me. Diane unlocked it and handed it over. Sungmin scrolled through the messages, his expression unreadable. Bella watched him, trying to imagine what he was feeling, 3 years of grief, suddenly revealed as a lie. The last message is from 6 months ago, Sungmin said flatly. He wanted to meet. You agreed. Yes, we met in Tokyo, neutral ground. He said he was finally ready to come forward, to expose Victor and clear Richard's name. Diane's voice caught. But something spooked him. He disappeared before we could finalize the plan. I haven't heard from him since. The photo, Bella said suddenly, remembering the text she'd received. Someone sent me a photo of you with a man in a restaurant. Asian, handsome. That was Yiwon. Diane nodded slowly. That must have been from the Tokyo meeting. Someone was watching us. Sungmin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened further. What is it? Bella asked. My security team traced the kill order on you. It was routed through a series of proxies, but they found the origin point. He looked at Bella with grim certainty. It came from Seoul. Bella felt the blood drain from her face. You think Yiwon? I don't know what to think anymore. Sungmin turned to Diane. You said Yiwon discovered something about Victor's operation. What was it? Diane hesitated. He never told me the details, just that it was explosive enough to bring down Victor's entire network, and that people would kill to keep it hidden. People like who? Like, Diane stopped, her eyes widening as she looked toward the window. Get down. The window exploded inward. Glass rained across the living room as Bella hit the floor, her ears ringing from the impact. She heard Diane scream, heard Sungmin shout something in Korean, heard the unmistakable crack of gunfire. Then hands were grabbing her, pulling her behind the couch. Sungmin crouched beside her, a gun in his hand. Where had that come from? His eyes scanning the room with predatory focus. Stay down, he ordered. More glass shattered somewhere in the house. Multiple entry points, multiple attackers. Bella's survival instincts kicked in. She pressed herself against the back of the couch, making herself as small as possible while her mind raced through options. The front door was too exposed. The back of the house was unknown territory. They were trapped. A figure appeared in the doorway, black tactical gear, assault rifle raised. Sung-min fired twice, and the figure crumpled. "Mom!" Bella screamed. Diane was cowering behind an armchair near the shattered window, blood streaming from a cut on her arm. She was alive, but exposed. "Cover your ears," Sung-min told Bella. Then he was moving, impossibly fast, firing at shadows Bella couldn't see. More shots, more screams. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. Then a new figure appeared, a woman in black, moving with the same lethal efficiency as Sung-min Ms-yoon. She must have been following at a distance, providing backup Bella hadn't known about. The battle was over in less than 3 minutes. When the silence came, it was almost worse than the chaos. Bella's ears rang, her hands shook. She couldn't make herself move from behind the couch. Sung-min appeared in front of her, his face spattered with blood that wasn't his. "Are you hurt?" Bella shook her head, not trusting her voice. He helped her to her feet, steadying her when her legs threatened to give out. Across the room, Ms. Yoon was checking the fallen attackers, 3 unconscious, 1 dead. "Victor's men," Ms. Yoon confirmed, examining an ID badge. "Private military contractors, high-end." "How did they find us so fast?" Bella demanded, her voice cracking. Ms. Yoon's expression was grim. "They didn't find you. They followed you. Someone's been tracking your phone." Bella's blood ran cold. Her phone. The unknown texts that had started everything. "The messages," she breathed. "Someone's been using them to monitor my location." Sung-min's jaw tightened. He held out his hand. "Give it to me." Bella handed over her phone. Sung-min dropped it on the marble floor and crushed it beneath his heel, grinding until the screen shattered into fragments. "We need to move, now." He turned to Diane, who was being helped to her feet by Ms. Yoon. "All of us, this location is compromised." They fled through the back of the house, where Ms. Yoon had a second vehicle waiting. As they drove away from the burning mansion, a fire had started somewhere during the attack, smoke now billowing into the Arizona sky. Bella looked back at the destruction and felt something fundamental shift inside her. This was real. This wasn't a game of revenge or a quest for answers. People were dying. People were trying to kill her. And the only person standing between her and death was a man she'd sworn to destroy. The drive was silent, except for Diane's quiet weeping. Ms. Yoon had administered first aid to the cut on her arm, deeper than it looked, but not life-threatening, and given her something for the pain. Now Diane sat in the back seat beside Bella, clutching her daughter's hand with desperate strength. "I'm sorry," Diane kept whispering. "I'm so sorry." Bella didn't know what to say. The woman beside her was a stranger, someone who had kept secrets for decades, who had married a criminal's victim to escape one predator and had somehow become entangled with another. Whatever image Bella had carried of her mother, it was gone now, replaced by something far more complicated. Sung-min sat in the front passenger seat, on the phone with someone speaking rapid Korean that Bella couldn't follow. His voice was calm, controlled, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the white-knuckled grip on his phone. When he finally hung up, he turned to address them. "We're going to Los Angeles. I have resources there, people Victor can't reach. We'll regroup and plan our next move." "Which is what?" Bella asked. "They know who we are, they know where we're going, how long before they find us again." "That depends," Sung-min's dark eyes met hers, "on whether we keep running or start fighting back." The safe house in Los Angeles was different from the one in Atherton, smaller, less luxurious, tucked into a nondescript neighborhood in the valley that no one would look at twice. It was the kind of place that said hiding rather than wealthy recluse. They arrived after midnight, exhausted and shell-shocked. Ms. Yoon handled security while Sung-min made more calls. Bella helped her mother to one of the bedrooms, staying until Diane finally fell into a fitful sleep. When she emerged, she found Sung-min in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. "She's sleeping," Bella said quietly. "Good." Silence stretched between them. Bella poured herself a cup of coffee. She wouldn't sleep tonight anyway, and sat across from him at the small table. 3 years, she said finally. You spent 3 years grieving for a brother who was alive the whole time. Sungmin's jaw tightened. Yes. How do you feel? The question seemed to surprise him. I don't know, angry, betrayed, relieved. He shook his head. Yiwon and I were never close. We had different visions for the family business. He wanted to maintain the old connections, the criminal networks. I wanted to go legitimate. We fought constantly. But he was still your brother. Yes, Sungmin's voice softened almost imperceptibly. He was still my brother, and I spent 3 years blaming myself for not protecting him, for not seeing the danger coming. He paused. Now I find out he's alive, and he might be the one behind the kill order on you. You don't know that. The order came from Seoul. Yiwon is in Seoul. He met her eyes. I don't believe in coincidences. Bella considered this. Why would he want me dead? What do I have to do with any of this? That's what we need to find out. Sungmin reached for a tablet on the counter and slid it toward her. Ms. Yoon has been digging. She found something interesting. Bella looked at the screen. Financial records, shell companies, a web of transactions that made her forensic accountant's brain light up. What am I looking at? The money trail connecting Victor Hale to the syndicate, and something else. He pointed to a series of transfers. These payments were made over the past 3 years, regular deposits into an offshore account. Who owns the account? That's the interesting part. It's in a name I recognize, a company called Meridian Holdings, the same company Yiwon used to use for his private dealings. Bella's eyes widened. You think Victor has been paying Yiwon? I think Yiwon might not have been hiding from Victor at all. I think they might have been working together. Sungmin's voice was bitter. My brother always resented that I took over the family business. Maybe he found a way to take it back. By allying with the man who destroyed my father. By allying with whoever could help him get what he wanted. Sungmin leaned back. Yiwon was always pragmatic. Loyalty meant nothing to him if it got in the way of his goals. Bella thought about this, turning the pieces over in her mind. If Yiwon had been working with Victor all along, then the entire picture changed. The leak that had destroyed her father's extraction. The kill order, the attacks. The leak, she said slowly. 3 years ago, someone told the SEC about the hostile takeover before you could complete it. What if it was Yiwon? Sungmin's expression went cold. Then my brother murdered your father, and he's been hiding in plain sight ever since. The next few days were a blur of investigation. Bella threw herself into the financial records, using every skill she'd honed over 3 years of preparation. The numbers told a story, not just of money moving between accounts, but of a vast conspiracy that reached into governments, financial institutions, and criminal networks across 3 continents. Victor Hale wasn't just connected to the syndicate. He was running it. The legitimate face of an organization that dealt in everything from money laundering to weapons trafficking. And Yiwon Park, if Sungmin's suspicions were correct, had been helping him all along. But there was something else buried in the data. Something that made Bella's heart race when she finally uncovered it. I found it, she announced, looking up from her laptop. Sungmin and Ms. Yoon gathered around her. The original leak to the SEC, Bella explained. It came from inside Park Capital, just like you suspected, but I traced it further. The source wasn't just anyone inside your organization. She turned the screen toward them. It was routed through Yiwon's personal server. He didn't just know about the leak, he was the leak. The silence that followed was heavy. He destroyed everything, Sungmin said finally, his voice hollow. My plan to save Richard, my relationship with my brother, my entire life for the past 3 years. He paused, all because he wanted power. There's more. Bella pulled up another file. I found communications between Yiwon and Victor dating back 5 years. They've been planning this together from the beginning. Victor wanted revenge on my mother. Yiwon wanted control of the Park Empire. They made a deal. Yiwon would help Victor destroy my father, and in return, Victor would help Yiwon take over your company. By framing me, Sungmin concluded. By making me look like the criminal so the board would turn against me. Exactly. The SEC investigation, the allegations of money laundering, It's all part of their plan. They're going to use the evidence to destroy you, and then Yi-won will step in as the legitimate heir to the Park family. Ms. Yoon spoke up. If Yi-won is really working with Victor, he'll have anticipated our investigation. He knows we'll come for him. Then we need to move faster. Sung-min's jaw tightened. We need to expose them both before they can destroy us. Bella had an idea. Risky, desperate, but possibly their only chance. The flash drives, she said. The ones my father mentioned in his suicide note. He said he had evidence that would bring down Victor, if we can find that evidence. We might be able to turn the tables, Sung-min finished. Where are they? Bella swallowed hard. According to my mother, my father hid them somewhere safe, somewhere no one would think to look. Where? She said he buried them with him. The idea was insane. Bella stood in the darkness of Beverly Hills' most exclusive cemetery, watching strangers dig up her father's grave, and wondered how her life had come to this. Sung-min had arranged everything: permits, bribes, trusted workers who wouldn't ask questions. The exhumation was technically legal, though the methods used to expedite it were decidedly not. The night was cold, the kind of California chill that surprised people who thought the state was always warm. Bella wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the jacket Sung-min had insisted she wear. He stood beside her now, a silent presence in the darkness. He hadn't tried to talk her out of this, hadn't offered empty comfort or meaningless platitudes. He'd simply asked what she needed and then made it happen. I used to come here, Bella said quietly, her eyes fixed on the workers below. After the funeral, I'd sit by his grave for hours, talking to him like he could hear me, telling him about my day, my plans, my anger. What did you tell him? That I was going to destroy the man who destroyed him. She laughed bitterly. I had it all figured out, except I was wrong about everything. You were working with the information you had. I was working with lies, my mother's lies, my own assumptions. She turned to look at him. How do you live with that, knowing that everything you believed was wrong? Sung-min was quiet for a moment. You find something new to believe in, something real. Before Bella could respond, one of the workers called out. They'd reached the casket. What followed was the longest hour of Bella's life. The casket was raised, opened, examined. She couldn't bring herself to look, couldn't face whatever remained of the father she'd loved and mourned and raged against. But Sung-min looked, and when he emerged from the grave site, he was carrying a small fireproof lockbox. It was inside, he said quietly, hidden beneath the lining. Bella's hands trembled as she took the box. It was heavy, the metal cold against her fingers. She fumbled with the latch until it finally gave way. Inside were 3 flash drives, a stack of documents, and a letter addressed to her in her father's handwriting. She opened the letter, her eyes blurring with tears she couldn't stop. Bella, if you're reading this, I'm dead. I'm sorry. I wasn't the man you thought I was. I made terrible choices, hurt people who trusted me, and destroyed everything I should have protected. But I want you to know why. Not to excuse my actions, there is no excuse, but because you deserve the truth. The drives contain proof of Victor Hale's entire operation. Financial records, communications, evidence of crimes spanning decades. I gathered it all, hoping to use it as leverage to escape. I failed, but maybe you won't. Use this evidence. Destroy him. And please, if you can find it in your heart, forgive me. I love you, sweetheart. I always have. I always will. Dad. Bella clutched the letter to her chest, sobbing. Years of grief and anger and confusion poured out of her, there in the darkness beside her father's desecrated grave. Sung-min said nothing. He simply stood beside her, a steady presence in the chaos of her emotions. When she finally stopped crying, she looked at the flash drives in her hand. Evidence. Enough to bring down Victor Hale and everyone connected to him. Including, possibly, Yuan Park. We need to go, she said, her voice hoarse. We need to end this. Sung-min nodded. But before they could move toward the waiting car, headlights appeared at the cemetery entrance. 3 SUVs, moving fast, blocking the exit. A man stepped out of the lead vehicle. Bella didn't recognize him, but Sungmin did. His voice was barely a whisper. Yiwon. Yiwon Park looked older than the photographs Bella had seen. Harder. The resemblance to Sungmin was unmistakable, same sharp features, same commanding presence, but where Sungmin's eyes held restraint, Yiwon's held something wilder, more dangerous. He walked toward them with the confidence of a man who knew he held all the cards. Behind him, a dozen armed men fanned out, cutting off any possibility of escape. "Little brother," Yiwon said, spreading his arms like he was greeting an old friend. "It's been too long." Sungmin's voice was ice. 3 years, I thought you were dead." "I know, I'm sorry about that." Yiwon's smile didn't reach his eyes. "It was necessary. Victor was closing in and I needed to disappear." "Is that why you've been working with him? Because he was closing in?" The smile flickered. "You've been busy, I expected as much." Yiwon's gaze shifted to Bella. "And you brought her, the Thompson girl. This makes things simpler." "What do you want, Yiwon?" "What do I want?" Yiwon laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the cemetery. "I want what was always supposed to be mine. The company, the power, the legacy. You stole it when Father died, pushed me aside like I was nothing. Father chose me to lead. You know that." "Father was wrong." Yiwon's voice hardened. "I spent my entire life preparing for that role, building relationships, making alliances, doing the dirty work that you were too squeamish to touch. And when the time came, he passed me over for his legitimate son, the one who wanted to go clean." "So you allied yourself with Victor Hale." Sungmin's disgust was palpable. "You helped him destroy innocent people just to get revenge on me." "Richard Thompson was hardly innocent. He was a thief and a liar who got caught in his own web. I just accelerated the process." Yiwon shrugged. "Collateral damage." Bella stepped forward, rage burning through her fear. "My father was trying to save his family. You destroyed him." Yiwon's attention shifted to her fully. "Your father was a pawn, just like you are now." His eyes dropped to the lockbox in her hands. "That drive, the one he hid in his coffin, I've been looking for it for 3 years. Hand it over and I might let you walk away." "And if I don't?" His smile was cold. "Then you'll join your father, in the ground where you're standing." The cemetery fell silent except for the distant hum of Lowe's Angels traffic. Bella clutched the lockbox against her chest, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Yiwon's men had formed a semicircle around them, their weapons trained and ready. Sungmin hadn't moved. He stood between Bella and his brother like a wall, his posture deceptively relaxed. But Bella could see the tension in his shoulders, the coiled readiness of a man preparing for violence. "You've gone too far, Yiwon," Sungmin said quietly. "There's no coming back from this." "Coming back?" Yiwon laughed. "I don't want to come back, I want to move forward. With Victor's resources and the Park family's legitimacy, I'll build something bigger than Father ever imagined. Something you were too weak to create. By becoming a criminal, by murdering innocent people. By being realistic." Yiwon's smile faded. "The world doesn't reward virtue, little brother. It rewards power, and I'm done pretending otherwise." He gestured to his men. "Take the drives, kill them both." The first shot came from somewhere behind them. Bella dropped to the ground instinctively, covering her head as chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed off the marble headstones. Men shouted. Someone screamed. She felt hands grab her, Sungmin, pulling her behind a massive stone monument. Ms. Yoon appeared from nowhere, firing at Yiwon's men with deadly precision. She must have been positioned as backup, hidden in the shadows of the cemetery. "Stay down," Sungmin ordered. He moved before Bella could respond, joining the firefight with a weapon that seemed to materialize from beneath his jacket. She watched him move, fluid, controlled, nothing like the businessman she'd first met at the Velvet Room. This was a different person entirely. Someone who had grown up in a world where violence was a language everyone spoke. The battle was brutal and brief. Ms. Yoon's backup, men Bella hadn't known were there, engaged Yiwon's forces from multiple angles. In less than 5 minutes, half of Yiwon's team was down. but Yi-won himself was retreating, falling back toward his SUV with a handful of surviving men providing cover fire. "He's getting away," Bella shouted. Sungmin moved to pursue, but more gunfire forced him back behind cover. Yi-won reached his vehicle and climbed inside. Tires squealed as the SUV tore out of the cemetery, disappearing into the Lowe's Angel's Night. Then Bella heard the scream. Her mother's scream. She spun around, searching frantically, and found Diane collapsed near the grave site. Ms. Yoon was already running toward her, but Bella was faster. "Mom!" She dropped to her knees beside her mother, and her hands came away covered in blood. Diane had been hit in the side, the wound pooling crimson with each heartbeat. "Hold on," Bella begged, pressing her hands against the injury. "You're going to be okay, just hold on." Diane's eyes were glassy, unfocused. "Bella, I'm sorry." "Don't talk, save your strength." Sungmin appeared beside them, already on his phone calling for emergency medical support. His voice was calm, controlled, but Bella could see the fear in his eyes. They both knew how bad this was. "Stay with me, Mom," Bella pleaded. "Please stay with me." The next hours were a blur of sirens and sterile corridors. They rushed Diane to a private medical facility in Malibu, a place Sungmin knew, staffed by doctors who didn't ask questions and didn't keep records. The kind of place that existed for people like him, people who lived in the shadows between legitimate society and something darker. Bella sat in the waiting room, still wearing clothes stained with her mother's blood. She couldn't make herself move to change, couldn't process anything beyond the terrible waiting. Sungmin stayed with her. He didn't speak, didn't offer empty reassurances, just sat beside her in the harsh fluorescent light while surgeons fought to save her mother's life. 4 hours, that's how long it took. When the doctor finally emerged, Bella shot to her feet so fast she nearly fell. "She's stable," the doctor said. "The bullet missed her vital organs, but she lost a lot of blood. We'll need to monitor her for the next few days, but I expect a full recovery." Bella's legs gave out. Sungmin caught her before she hit the floor, holding her upright while relief crashed through her in waves. "Thank you," she managed. "Can I see her?" "She's sleeping now, but yes, you can sit with her." Diane looked impossibly fragile in the hospital bed. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed, monitoring vital signs that the staff assured Bella were improving. But she was pale, so pale, her skin almost translucent against the white sheets. Bella sat beside her, holding her hand, watching her breathe. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her sleeping mother. "For everything, for being angry, for not understanding." The words felt inadequate, but she needed to say them. Needed to release the resentment she'd carried for years, ever since her mother had remarried and moved away and left Bella alone with her grief. She understood now. Diane hadn't been running from the past. She'd been trying to protect her daughter from it. Every secret, every lie, every distance between them had been a misguided attempt at love. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. But it was something. Sungmin found her on the balcony overlooking the Pacific, just as dawn was breaking over the water. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, impossibly beautiful against the darkness of the night they'd survived. He stood beside her in silence, offering her a cup of coffee that she accepted gratefully. "Ms. Yoon has been tracking Yi-won's movements," he said finally. "He's gone to ground, but he won't stay hidden for long. He needs those flash drives to complete his plan." "What plan?" "The SEC investigation. The one I hired you to help with." Sungmin's voice was grim. "Yi-won manufactured the evidence. He's been feeding information to the feds for months, building a case that makes me look like the criminal mastermind behind Victor's entire operation." "But you're not." "No, but without proof, my word means nothing." He turned to face her. "Your father's flash drives, they contain the real evidence. Communications between Yi-won and Victor. Financial records that prove I wasn't involved. If we can get that information to the right people." "We can clear your name," Bella finished, "and destroy them both." "Yes." She looked at the flash drives in her hand. She'd been carrying them since the cemetery, unable to let them out of her sight. 3 small pieces of plastic and metal that contained the power to end this nightmare. What do we need to do? Sungmin's expression was hard. We need to stop running and start fighting. We need to expose Yiwon and Victor before they can finish what they started. How? Victor Hale is hosting his annual shareholder gala in 3 days. It's the biggest event of the year for Hale Financial Group. Media, investors, politicians. Everyone who matters will be there. Bella understood immediately. You want to confront him publicly. I want to destroy him publicly. Show the world who he really is, what he's really done. The flash drives contain enough evidence to bury him and everyone connected to him. Sungmin paused. But it's dangerous. Yiwon will know we're coming. Victor will have security everywhere. There's a very real chance we won't survive. Bella thought about her father, hanging in his office with 3 words of apology. About her mother, lying in a hospital bed because she tried to protect the people she loved. About 3 years of rage and grief and planning, all leading to this moment. I don't care, she said. I want to finish this. Sungmin studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Then we finish it together. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Bella spent her mornings at her mother's bedside, watching Diane slowly regain strength. They talked, really talked for the first time in years, about Richard's mistakes, about Diane's first engagement to Victor, about the fear and love and desperation that had driven so many terrible decisions. I thought I could fix everything, Diane admitted one afternoon, her voice still weak. I thought if I just kept the secrets, protected you from the truth, everything would be okay. It wasn't okay, Mom. It was never okay. I know. Tears slipped down Diane's cheeks. I was so afraid of losing you. After your father died, you were all I had left. And I could see how much you loved him, how much his death destroyed you. I couldn't bear to take away your memories of him, too. So you let me believe lies. I let you keep your father, the version of him that loved you, that read you bedtime stories and taught you to ride a bike. Diane squeezed her hand. The other version, the gambler, the thief, the desperate man who made deals with monsters, that wasn't the father you knew. I didn't want that to be how you remembered him. Bella wiped her own tears. I need to remember all of him, Mom, the good and the bad. That's the only way I can move forward. I know that now, Diane's voice cracked. I'm sorry, sweetheart, for everything. I forgive you. The words surprised Bella even as she said them, but she meant them. After everything, the secrets, the lies, the years of distance, she meant them. Her mother wasn't perfect. Her father hadn't been perfect, but they had loved her, both of them, in their own flawed and broken ways. That had to count for something. In the afternoons, Bella worked with Sungmin and Ms. Yoon on the plan for the gala. They studied blueprints of the Hale Financial Group headquarters, a glass and steel tower in the heart of San Francisco's financial district. They analyzed security protocols, guard rotations, entry and exit points. They planned for contingencies, backup options, escape routes. The gala will be held on the 40th floor, Ms. Yoon explained, pointing to the blueprints spread across the table. Approximately 300 guests, plus staff and security. Victor will give a keynote speech at 9 o'clock. That's when we move, Sungmin said. Maximum exposure, maximum witnesses. What about Yiwon? Bella asked. He'll know we're coming. He'll be there, Sungmin confirmed. My sources say he's planning to use the gala to announce his return from the dead. With me discredited and facing federal charges, he'll position himself as the legitimate heir to the Park family, the prodigal son, back to save the company from his criminal brother. So we're walking into a trap. We're walking into a carefully prepared battleground. Sungmin's smile was grim. The difference is, we know it's a trap, and we've prepared a few surprises of our own. The night before the gala, Bella found herself alone with Sungmin in the safe house's small living room. Ms. Yoon had gone to coordinate with their backup team. Diane was sleeping, still recovering. The house was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and the hum of electronics. Sung-min sat on the couch, reviewing something on his tablet. Bella watched him from the doorway, struck by how different he looked from the cold, distant businessman she'd first encountered at the Velvet Room. He was still guarded, probably always would be, but she could see the cracks in his armor now, the weariness around his eyes, the way his shoulders carried tension he never acknowledged, the moments when his mask slipped and she glimpsed the man underneath. "You should be sleeping," he said without looking up. "So should you." He set aside the tablet, finally meeting her eyes. "I don't sleep much, haven't for years. Since your brother died." "Since long before that." He paused. "When you grow up the way I did, you learn that sleep is a vulnerability. Too much can happen while your eyes are closed." Bella crossed the room and sat beside him. "What was it like, growing up in your family?" "Complicated." He was quiet for a moment. "My father built his empire on relationships that straddled the line between legitimate and criminal. He was trying to go straight by the time I was born, but the old connections never really went away. I grew up knowing things that other children didn't, seeing things." "That must have been lonely." "It was." His dark eyes met hers. "What about you? Greenwich Society princess, forensic accounting degree from Columbia. Your life must have seemed perfect from the outside." Bella laughed bitterly. "Perfect. Right. My father was a functioning addict who hid his gambling from everyone. My mother was so desperate to maintain appearances that she ignored every warning sign. And I was so caught up in my own life that I didn't notice anything was wrong until it was too late. You can't blame yourself for not seeing what they worked hard to hide." "I know, but I do anyway." She looked at her hands. "That's why I spent 3 years planning revenge. It was easier to be angry at you than to face the truth about my own family. And now? Now I don't know what I feel." She looked at him, really looked, seeing past the expensive suit and the powerful persona to the man beneath. "Except grateful. You didn't have to help me. You didn't have to risk everything to save my mother, to clear my father's name. You could have walked away at any point." "No," his voice was soft. "I couldn't." "Why not?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because you were the first person in years who looked at me and saw something other than a monster." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with impossible gentleness. "You came to destroy me, and instead you made me remember what it felt like to be human." The air between them crackled with tension. Bella's heart raced as she leaned into his touch, her eyes never leaving his. "Sung-min, we might not survive tomorrow," he said quietly. "I need you to know, whatever happens, these past weeks have meant something to me. You've meant something to me. You mean something to me, too." She closed the distance between them. The kiss was tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But when he responded, pulling her closer, deepening the contact, it became something else entirely. A declaration, a promise, a moment of connection in the midst of chaos. When they finally broke apart, Bella was trembling. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming intensity of what she felt. "What happens after tomorrow?" she asked. Sung-min's arms tightened around her. "I don't know. I've been alone for so long, I've forgotten how to think about the future." "Then let's survive tomorrow first, and figure out the rest together." His smile was small but real. Together. The morning of the gala dawned gray and cold. Bella woke to the sound of her phone buzzing, not her destroyed phone, but a new secure device Ms. Yoon had provided. She checked the notification and felt her blood run cold. Turn on the news. She found Sung-min already in the living room, staring at the television with an expression she'd never seen before. Something between rage and despair. On the screen, a news anchor was speaking over footage of Sung-min's face. Korean business mogul Sung-min Park is now the subject of a federal manhunt after evidence emerged linking him to an international money laundering operation. The SEC, working with the FBI, has issued warrants for Park's arrest in connection with. The anchor's voice faded into white noise. "Yi-won," Bella breathed. "He released the evidence early." Sung-min's jaw was tight. Not all of it, just enough to make me look guilty. He's saving the rest for his triumphant return at the gala tonight. Can we still go through with the plan? We don't have a choice. He turned off the television. If anything, this makes tonight more important. It's our only chance to set the record straight before I'm arrested, or worse. Ms. Yoon appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. We have a problem. The safe house has been compromised. How? I don't know yet, but we need to move. Now. The next 12 hours were a nightmare of running and hiding. They moved between 3 different locations: an abandoned warehouse in East LA, a sympathizer's apartment in Koreatown, a storage unit near the port. Everywhere they went, Yiwon's people seemed to be one step behind. Finally, as sunset approached, they reached their final staging point: a penthouse apartment in the financial district, just blocks from the Hale Financial headquarters. Ms. Yoon had secured it through contacts Bella didn't ask about. The apartment belonged to a tech executive who was conveniently out of the country, and who owed Sungmin enough favors not to ask questions. From the windows, they could see the Hale Financial building glittering in the evening light. Guests were already arriving for the gala, limousines pulling up to the entrance, men and women in expensive clothes walking through the lobby. It's time, Sungmin said. Bella looked at herself in the mirror. She was wearing a black gown that Ms. Yoon had somehow acquired, elegant, expensive, the kind of thing that would help her blend in at an event like this. Her hair was swept up, her makeup subtle but effective. She looked like she belonged in that world, the world of wealth and power and dangerous secrets. But she didn't feel like she belonged. She felt like an imposter, playing a role in a drama she hadn't auditioned for. Are you ready? Sungmin asked, appearing behind her. He was wearing a tuxedo that made him look even more devastating than usual, but his eyes were serious, focused. As ready as I'll ever be. He handed her a small device, no bigger than a flash drive. This contains the evidence from your father's drives. When we get inside, you need to plug it into the building's presentation system. It will broadcast everything to every screen in the venue. And then we hope the truth is enough to save us. Bella slipped the device into her clutch, her fingers brushing against the small handgun Ms. Yoon had insisted she carry. She'd never fired a weapon before. She hoped she wouldn't have to start tonight. Let's go. The Hale Financial headquarters was even more impressive up close. The building rose 40 stories into the San Francisco sky, all gleaming glass and polished steel. The entrance was flanked by security personnel checking invitations and scanning guests with metal detectors, standard precautions for an event of this magnitude. Bella and Sungmin had anticipated this. Their invitations were flawless forgeries, and Ms. Yoon had provided jamming devices that would prevent the metal detectors from registering their weapons. Even so, Bella held her breath as they approached the security checkpoint. The guard scanned her invitation, glanced at her face, and waved her through. She exhaled slowly and stepped inside. The lobby was a cathedral of capitalism, marble floors, soaring ceilings, art installations that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Guests mingled around a champagne fountain, their laughter echoing off the walls. Bella spotted several faces she recognized from her research: politicians, business leaders, celebrities who had aligned themselves with Victor Hale's empire. They had no idea what they were supporting, no idea that their host was a criminal who had destroyed lives without remorse. Tonight they would learn. Sungmin touched her elbow. The elevators are this way. We need to get to the 40th floor before Victor's speech. They moved through the crowd, 2 more well-dressed guests in a sea of wealth and privilege. No one gave them a second glance. The elevator ride felt endless. Bella watched the floor numbers climb, 10, 20, 30, her heart racing faster with each passing second. Whatever happens tonight, Sungmin said quietly, thank you. For what? For believing me, for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to. Bella looked at him, this man she had spent 3 years hatting, who had turned out to be the only person willing to help her find the truth. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said. "When you realized who I was, what I was planning, you could have had me killed. Instead, you gave me a job." "I saw something in you." His dark eyes met hers. "Something worth saving." The elevator doors opened. The 40th floor was breathtaking, a vast open space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Hundreds of guests moved through the room, their conversations creating a constant hum of sound. A stage had been set up at the far end, where Victor Hale would soon deliver his keynote address. And there, near the bar, stood Yi-won Park. He saw them at the same moment they saw him. His expression flickered, surprise, then something darker, before settling into a cold smile. "Well," he murmured, loud enough for them to hear across the crowded room, "the prodigal brother returns." The next few minutes were a delicate dance. Bella and Sung-min moved through the crowd, keeping Yi-won in sight while trying not to draw attention. Ms. Yoon had positioned herself near the building's security hub, ready to create a distraction when they needed it. At precisely 9 o'clock, Victor Hale took the stage. He was older than Bella had expected, mid-60s, with silver hair and the kind of distinguished appearance that came from decades of careful cultivation. He smiled at the crowd like a benevolent patriarch, spreading his arms wide. "Good evening, friends. Thank you all for being here to celebrate another successful year for Hale Financial Group." Bella tuned out his speech. She was focused on the presentation system, a series of screens behind the stage that were currently displaying the Hale Financial logo. If she could reach the control panel, she could plug in her device and broadcast the evidence to every screen in the building. She caught Sung-min's eye. He nodded almost imperceptibly. She began moving toward the stage, her clutch clutched tightly in her hand. "And it's my great pleasure to announce a new partnership that will take our company into the future." Victor was building to something. Bella could feel the anticipation in the crowd. "Please welcome a man who has been like a son to me. A man who many thought was lost to us, but who has returned to help lead our organization into a new era. Ladies and gentlemen, Yi-won Park." The crowd erupted in applause as Yi-won mounted the stage. Bella froze. This was it, Yi-won's triumphant return. The moment he would announce himself as the legitimate heir to the Park Empire and cement Sung-min's destruction. She looked at Sung-min. His face was a mask, but she could see the pain in his eyes. Then she made her decision. She stepped forward, pushing through the crowd toward the stage. She grabbed a microphone from a startled staff member and spoke before anyone could stop her. "Good evening. My name is Bella Thompson. 3 years ago, my father was murdered by the men standing on this stage. Tonight, I'm going to prove it." The room went silent. Every face turned toward her. Hundreds of wealthy, powerful people staring at this woman who had just accused their host of murder. Bella's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady as she continued. "Victor Hale and Yi-won Park have been working together for years to build a criminal empire. Money laundering, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence is irrefutable." She plugged her device into the presentation panel. The screens behind the stage flickered, and then exploded with documents, photos, financial records, communications. Everything her father had gathered. Everything that proved Victor and Yi-won's guilt. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones came out, recording everything. The media representatives in attendance were already calling their editors. Victor's face had gone purple with rage. "This is outrageous. Security." "The police are already on their way," Bella said. "Along with the FBI, the SEC, and every regulatory agency that will be very interested in what I've just shown this room." Yi-won moved toward her, his expression murderous. "You stupid girl. You have no idea what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done." Bella stood her ground. "I've exposed you, both of you, for what you really are." Yi-won reached into his jacket. And then Sung-min was there, stepping between them, his own weapon drawn. "That's enough, brother." The two brothers faced each other in front of hundreds of witnesses, the evidence of their families' darkest secrets playing on screens all around them. You always had to be the hero, Yi-won spat. The good son, the legitimate heir, father's favorite. This isn't about father. Sung-min's voice was steady. This is about what you've done, the people you've hurt, the lives you've destroyed. I did what was necessary, what you were too weak to do. Yi-won's hand was still inside his jacket, hovering over his concealed weapon. The Park family was built on blood and compromise. You wanted to pretend we were something we're not. We could have built something real, something lasting. Instead, you chose this. Sung-min gestured at the chaos around them, the panicking guests, the damning evidence, the approaching sirens. Was it worth it? I would do it again. Yi-won's voice was cold. 1,000 times. He drew his weapon. Sung-min moved faster. The brothers collided in a brutal struggle, grappling for control of Yi-won's gun. They crashed through a table, sending champagne glasses flying. Guests screamed and scrambled for the exits. Bella watched, helpless, as the two men fought. She wanted to help, but she didn't dare fire into that tangle of limbs. She was as likely to hit Sung-min as Yi-won. Then Ms. Yoon appeared beside her. We need to secure Victor, now. Victor Hale was trying to slip away through a service entrance. Bella intercepted him, blocking his path. Going somewhere. His eyes were wild, desperate. You don't understand. This isn't my fault. Yi-won, he manipulated me. Save it for the FBI. Security personnel surrounded them, not Victor's people, but the federal agents who had entered the building in response to Ms. Yoon's tip. Victor was handcuffed while he continued to protest his innocence. Behind them, the fight between Sung-min and Yi-won had reached its climax. Sung-min had his brother pinned to the ground, one knee on his chest, the gun kicked away across the floor. It's over, Sung-min said, breathing hard. You've lost. Yi-won laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You think this ends here? The syndicate has roots everywhere. Victor was just one branch. You'll never be free of this. Never. Maybe not. Sung-min's voice was tired. But at least I'll be able to live with myself. FBI agents moved in, pulling Yi-won to his feet and securing his hands behind his back. More agents were gathering evidence, securing the flash drives, taking statements from witnesses. Bella watched it all from a distance, feeling strangely disconnected from the chaos she had created. Then Sung-min was beside her, his arm wrapping around her shoulders. It's over, he said quietly. She leaned into him, exhausted beyond words. Is it, really? The worst of it. He pressed his lips to her hair. Victor and Yi-won will face trial. The evidence will exonerate me and expose their crimes. The syndicate will lose its primary financial channel. And my father. His name will be cleared. The world will know he was trying to do the right thing at the end. Tears slipped down Bella's cheeks. He was still a thief. He still made terrible choices. He was human, flawed and broken and desperately trying to protect his family. Sung-min turned her to face him, just like the rest of us. She looked at him, this man she had sworn to destroy, who had become the only person she trusted in the world. What happens now? She asked. His smile was small but real. Now we build something new, together, if you want. She answered him with a kiss. 1 year later, Bella Thompson stood at the window of her corner office, watching the Seattle skyline glitter in the evening light. So much had changed in 12 months. Victor Hale had been convicted on 47 counts, including conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder. He would spend the rest of his life in federal prison, his empire dismantled, and his name synonymous with corruption. Yi-won had cut a deal with prosecutors, trading testimony for a reduced sentence. He was in a medium-security facility somewhere in the Midwest, far from the power and influence he had once craved. Sung-min hadn't visited him. Bella wasn't sure he ever would. The SEC investigation into Park Capital had been resolved. The evidence from Richard's flash drives had proven that Sung-min was innocent, that he had actually been trying to prevent the crimes his brother and Victor had committed. The company's reputation was damaged but salvageable. Sung-min had made the decision to relocate headquarters to Seattle. A fresh start, he said. A chance to build something new in a city that didn't carry the weight of old history. He'd asked Bella to join him, not as a consultant or a contractor, but as chief compliance officer. A position of real authority with real responsibility. She'd said yes. The door to her office opened, and she turned to see the man himself standing in the doorway. Sung-min Park looked different these days. Still powerful, still commanding, but with a lightness in his eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. The constant vigilance had faded, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. "Ready?" he asked. Tonight was their engagement party. Close friends, family, a rooftop venue overlooking Puget Sound. Nothing extravagant, they'd both had enough drama for a lifetime. "Almost." Bella crossed the room to stand before him. "I was just thinking." About who I was a year ago. This angry, broken woman who showed up at a bar in Manhattan with revenge on her mind and hatred in her heart. She smiled. "I wanted to destroy you." "I remember." His arms wrapped around her waist. "I also remember being intrigued by you from the first moment I saw you, even when I knew you were dangerous." "I was dangerous." "The most dangerous person I'd ever met." His lips brushed her forehead. "Because you made me feel things I'd spent a lifetime trying to avoid." She pulled back to look at him. "And now I can't imagine my life without you." His voice was soft, sincere. "You saved me, Bella, in every way that matters." "You saved me too." She thought about her father, about the truth she'd finally uncovered. "You gave me answers. You gave me closure. You gave me a reason to stop being angry and start living again." "We saved each other then." "I like that version better." He kissed her, soft, sweet, full of promise. When they finally broke apart, Bella glanced at her desk. A photograph sat there in a simple frame, her father, smiling at her graduation, his arm around her shoulders. Beside it was a more recent photo, her and her mother, taken during a visit to Portland last month. Diane had fully recovered from her injuries. She'd divorced Robert Caldwell. Turns out he was more interested in her money than her, and moved to a small community outside Portland. Close enough to visit, far enough to maintain her independence. She and Bella were rebuilding their relationship, one conversation at a time. It wasn't easy. There were still secrets to process, wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But they were trying, and that was more than Bella had dared to hope for a year ago. "What are you thinking about?" Sung-min asked. "My dad." Bella touched the photograph gently. "I still miss him. Even knowing everything, the gambling, the stealing, the desperate deals, I still miss him." "Of course you do. He was your father." "I used to think that loving him meant I had to believe he was perfect, that acknowledging his flaws somehow dishonored his memory." She shook her head. "Now I know that's not how love works. Real love means accepting people as they are, broken parts and all." "Is that what you've done with me?" His voice was light, teasing, but she could hear the genuine question beneath it. "I've accepted that you're stubborn, impossible, and absolutely convinced that you're always right." She smiled up at him. "And I love you anyway." "I love you too." He took her hand. "Now come on, we have a party to get to." The rooftop venue was perfect. Fairy lights strung between potted trees, casting a warm glow over the gathered guests. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The view of Puget Sound was spectacular, the water reflecting the last rays of sunset. Bella looked around at the people who had come to celebrate with them. Ms. Yoon, looking almost approachable in a dress instead of her usual severe suits. A handful of trusted employees from Park Capital, some of Bella's old colleagues from her accounting days. And her mother, sitting at a table near the front, smiling at Bella with tears in her eyes. Sung-min took her hand and led her to the center of the venue, where their guests had gathered around them. "Thank you all for being here," he said, his voice carrying across the rooftop. "A year ago, I was facing the destruction of everything I'd built. My company was under investigation. My brother had betrayed me, and I was convinced that I would spend the rest of my life alone." He turned to Bella, his dark eyes warm. Then this woman walked into my life and changed everything. She was supposed to be my enemy. Instead, she became my salvation. Bella felt tears prick her eyes as she squeezed his hand. I'm not good at speeches, she said to the gathered guests, but I want to say this. A year ago, I was so consumed by anger that I couldn't see anything else. I had turned my grief into a weapon and pointed it at the wrong target. She looked at Sung-min. This man showed me that I was wrong, not just about him, about everything. He showed me that the truth is more complicated than good guys and bad guys, that forgiveness is stronger than revenge, that love can grow in the most unlikely places. She raised her glass. To second chances. To second chances, the guests echoed. The party continued around them, laughter, music, the clink of glasses, and the murmur of conversation. But Bella barely noticed any of it. She was too focused on the man beside her and the future they were building together. Later, when the guests had gone and they were alone on the rooftop, Sung-min pulled her into his arms. Happy? He asked. Bella thought about everything that had brought them here, the grief and rage that had consumed her, the secrets and lies that had nearly destroyed them both, the moment in a dark hallway when their eyes had first met and something had shifted in the universe. Yes, she said, I'm happy. She had come to destroy him. Instead, she had found him, and in finding him had found herself. The girl who had applied for a job at the Velvet Room with revenge in her heart was gone. In her place was a woman who had learned to let go of the past and embrace the future. A woman who had fallen in love with the man she was supposed to hate. A woman who had finally, after years of searching, found her way home.